Not every man who hides is running away. Some are protecting secrets so deep that, if exposed, could destroy an entire town. Luke Mathers spent 15 years isolated in the mountains until a single letter changed everything. Emma Lynn needs your help. But who is Emma? And why is the most powerful man in town determined to claim her at any cost? Get ready for a story that will shake you to your core, filled with forbidden love, forgotten promises, and a revelation no one is prepared to face. Now imagine this. The past you tried to bury is alive, and it wants revenge. Luke must return to the place where he lost everything, face an enemy who will stop at nothing, and fight for the woman he never stopped loving. Time is running out. Tension is rising, and one decision could change everyone's fate. What would you do if you had just one chance to make things right? Stay with us until the end of this video to discover how a promise of love and protection could become the spark for a deadly showdown. Not every man who disappears from the world is running away. Sometimes he's protecting himself or protecting someone else. Luke Mathers had lived alone for 15 years in the mountains of Big Sky, Montana, after vanishing without a trace. But on that cold autumn morning, when he started up his old pickup truck and drove down into town, he had no idea he was about to change the fate of a woman who had already lost everything. Before we dive into what happened, make sure to subscribe to the channel for weekly stories that inspire, stir emotions, and stay with you long after they end. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Now, get ready, because this story begins in silence and ends with a kiss no one ever forgot. The engine of Luke's old Ford F-100 growled like a bear waking from hibernation. Smoke drifted from the tailpipe into the cold air as he drove down the dirt roads, cutting through Forgotten Valley, a place most people avoided. With an unshaven face, tired eyes, and calloused hands, Luke was just a shadow of the man he used to be before he lost everything one November night in 1985. Since then, he'd lived in isolation. His only ties to the world were rare trips to town for coffee, ammo, and fuel. But that morning, something was different. A letter had been slipped under the door of the abandoned workshop he visited from time to time. Handwritten with just a few words, but enough to shake his world. Emma Lynn is being forced to marry Amos Pickett. She needs help. Luke crumpled the note in his hand. It had been over a decade since he'd heard that name. Emma, the one woman he could never forget, no matter how hard he tried to erase her from memory. Meanwhile, in Pine Hollow, Emma sat on the edge of a modest bed in a worn-down hotel room downtown. The digital clock read 7:14 a.m., and the soft twang of an old country station played from a battered radio, making time feel slower. Her 8-year-old daughter, Ellie, lay asleep beside her, clutching a threadbare stuffed animal. Emma stared out the window, eyes locked on the town hall across the street, where, in just a few hours, a marriage she didn't want would be made official. One she couldn't escape. Amos Pickett owned half the town, the bank, the gas station, and most of the local properties. And now he wanted Emma. Widowed, broke, and with no one to defend her, Emma had received a formal proposal: marry Amos and have her debt forgiven, or lose custody of Ellie. Everyone in town knew. No one stood up to him. And the ceremony would be public, held in the grand hall of the town hall. A show of power, a reminder that in Pine Hollow, everything and everyone had a price. All Emma wanted was to disappear. Luke drove faster down the winding road, the radio crackling between stations. In the truck bed, a box of tools and a backpack packed for weeks away. But this time, he had no intention of coming back alone. As he neared the town, memories crept in like ghosts. The last time he saw Emma was at the doors of a hospital in 1985, just after her brother, Luke's best friend, died because of a debt to Amos Pickett. Luke vanished that night, and now he was coming back because he couldn't let history repeat itself. The sky darkened. A storm brewing, and the gravel road jolted the truck at every bend. Luke didn't know if she even remembered him. But deep down, that didn't matter. He had sworn he would never let Emma suffer again. And even if it cost him everything he had left, he would do whatever it took to stop that wedding. Because sometimes, all a man has left is a promise. Pine Hollow felt frozen in time. The main street still had those old neon signs, vintage cars parked in front of the downtown diner, and the same faces Luke remembered, walking as if nothing had changed. But everything was different. The clock tower struck 9 a.m., and the bells echoed like a warning. The town was preparing for what they called a community event. But Luke knew the truth. This wedding was a trap, a public display of Amos Pickett's dirty power. Inside the town hall, Emma adjusted the borrowed blue dress that clung too tight around her arms. The zipper, stuck like the fabric itself, was reminding her there was no escape. Ellie held her hand tightly, sensing the tension in the air. Emma didn't cry anymore. Her face was calm, a mask of composure, but inside she was breaking. The justice of the peace was already in place, glancing at his watch. Amos Pickett didn't tolerate delays. He wanted a show. Luke's truck skidded onto Main Street, kicking up dust and turning heads. Some recognized him, even after all these years. The beard, the hardened eyes. Whispers spread quickly. That's him. Luke Mathers is back. He stepped out of the truck and crossed the street without hesitation. Every step was a challenge to the town that had let him disappear without a fight. When he pushed open the doors of the town hall, the sound echoed like thunder. Silencing the room, Amos turned slowly, disbelief etched on his face. Emma looked the same way, and her breath caught in her throat. Those eyes? She knew them. Even after all this time, she knew who stood there. Luke didn't speak at first. He locked eyes with Emma, then with Ellie. The little girl stared back, wide-eyed, still clutching her mother's hand. And then he said it. This wedding isn't happening. His voice was firm, sharp. There was no room for doubt. Amos stormed forward, his face turning red with anger. You have no right to be here, Mathers. This has nothing to do with you. Luke didn't flinch. It has everything to do with any man who's got the guts to stand up to a coward like you. She's not marrying you, Amos. Not today. Not ever. The tension in the hall was suffocating. The judge hesitated, glancing between the two men, unsure what to do. Emma stood frozen, her world spinning. Before anyone could stop him, Luke pulled a small wooden box from his pocket and opened it. Inside were folded bills and a deed. Here's payment for her debt, with interest. Amos tried to wave it off, stammering that it was illegal, but Luke cut him off. You took everything from her. Now, she finally gets to choose. Emma. He stepped closer. I didn't come to save you. I came to keep a promise I made 15 years ago. Will you? Come with me? The entire room held its breath. Time stopped. Ellie looked up at her mother. Emma looked at Luke. Her eyes filled with tears she thought she'd lost long ago. Something inside her broke free. She walked up to Luke, stopped inches from him, and said, Yes, I'll go with you. He held out his hand, and when she took it, the whole town stood still, but no one was prepared for what Luke would do next. The silence was so thick you could hear someone breathe across the room. Luke held Emma's hand tight, like a man gripping something he never wanted to lose again. But it was the look between them that said everything, years of pain, longing, and unspoken words compressed into a single heartbeat. Ellie, still clutching her mother's leg, watched quietly. Then Luke raised his other hand and gently touched Emma's face. As if he needed to be sure she was real, Amos stepped forward, seething. But before he could speak, Luke did the unthinkable. He leaned in and kissed Emma. It wasn't rushed or impulsive. It was deep, full of memories, of promises broken, of a love that never died. Emma hesitated for a heartbeat, body tense, but then surrendered. Because in that kiss was something Amos would never understand. Choice. The room erupted in gasps. Murmurs flew like wildfire, phones raised, flashes capturing a moment Pine Hollow would never forget. Amos, consumed by rage, shouted, "This isn't over. You'll both regret this." Luke turned, shielding Emma with his body, locking eyes with the man. "Try me, Amos. Just remember, I'm not the man who walked away. Now, I've got nothing to lose." He grabbed Emma's hand and walked toward Ellie. Emma scooped her daughter into her arms, and together they left the hall with Luke, under the stunned gaze of an entire town. At the truck, Luke opened the passenger door, helping Emma and Ellie. Inside, not a word passed between them. They knew this escape wouldn't come easy, but urgency hung in the air, like they were racing time, or maybe racing the past. Luke started the engine and pulled away, leaving not just the hall behind, but everything Emma had ever known. On the winding dirt road toward Luke's old, forgotten ranch, storm clouds gathered over the mountains. The wind howled as if warning of what was coming. Emma clutched Ellie close, heart pounding, unsure if she'd made the right choice. Luke's eyes stayed locked on the road, but inside, a storm raged. He knew Amos wouldn't take this lightly, and he knew bringing Emma back meant facing ghosts he'd buried long ago. The truck pushed forward, headlights slicing through darkness. Emma broke the silence. "Why did you come back?" Luke didn't take his eyes off the road. "Because 15 years ago, I made a promise to your father, and because I never stopped loving you." The words hung heavy, like lightning waiting to strike. Emma didn't answer right away. She looked at him, eyes glassy with tears, while Ellie, now asleep, dreamed peacefully, unaware of the storm closing in dot as the cabin appeared through the trees. Emma's chest tightened. This place would be her refuge or her prison. When they stepped out, wind whipping the doors and rain beginning to fall, Luke turned to her and said, "You're safe here, I promise." But miles away, Amos Pickett answered a call. His reply was cold, sharp. "Bring them back. Whatever it takes." The ranch looked exactly as Luke had left it years ago, surrounded by tall pines, the roof still covered in dry leaves, and the old wooden porch creaking beneath his boots. Emma stepped out of the truck with Ellie in her arms, her eyes scanning the place with quiet caution. There was something in the silence, not the calm of peace, but the stillness before something breaks. Luke unlocked the door and flicked on a dim light. Everything inside was simple, clean, and welcoming. To Emma, it felt like stepping into another world. Ellie ran to an old armchair near the fireplace and grinned. "Mommy, it smells like cake in here." Emma didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Luke appeared behind them with 2 blankets in hand and pointed to the couch. "You can sleep here tonight. Tomorrow, I'll get the guest room ready." His voice was rough, like someone relearning how to speak. Emma nodded, but inside, a storm brewed. None of it made sense. Why did he still care? What did he really want? While Ellie slept wrapped in the blanket, Emma stood by the window, watching the road below, now swallowed by the night's mist. She knew Amos wouldn't take humiliation. Quietly, when she turned around, Luke was there, tending the fire, but his eyes were on her. "You don't trust me, do you?" he asked, blunt and steady. Emma hesitated. "I don't know who you are anymore, Luke. The man who disappeared, or the one who kissed me in front of everyone?" He stood slowly and walked toward her. "I'm both. I left because I couldn't live with what happened, with what I did." Emma crossed her arms, tense. "And now? What changed?" Luke locked eyes with her, and something in his gaze made her heart skip. You did. When I found out what he was doing to you, I couldn't just stand by. I failed your father. I won't fail you. Emma's eyes burned with tears. But before she could speak, Luke raised his hand and gently touched her cheek. The touch was soft, almost hesitant, and unlike that impulsive kiss at City Hall, now there was silence. And time. His eyes searched hers for permission. Emma closed her eyes and took a slow breath. When his lips met hers again, there was no audience, no pressure, just a kiss full of pain and longing, regret and hope. When they pulled apart, Emma whispered, "This won't protect us from him." And Luke replied, "No, but it gives me something worth fighting for." Far down the road, headlights cut through the night. A black SUV barreled along the dirt path. Amos Pickett wasn't waiting. He was coming, and with him, 2 armed men. "I want everything back," he growled, gripping the wheel tight. "The woman, the kid, and the respect he stole from me." Back at the ranch, Luke locked the windows, senses sharp. He knew peace wouldn't come, not until he faced the demons he'd left to grow. And tonight, the reckoning was coming. The early morning hours brought a suffocating tension, as if the mountain itself was holding its breath. Emma couldn't sleep. Sitting on the edge of the couch, she watched Ellie breathe peacefully on the makeshift bed beside the fireplace. Outside, the wind whistled through the trees, and every creak of the old wooden house made her heart jump. Luke was on the porch, jacket zipped to his neck, flashlight in hand, with an old transistor radio clipped to his belt. When Emma stepped outside and found him standing there, he didn't turn. "They're coming, aren't they?" she asked. Quietly, Luke nodded, his eyes locked on the dark woods. "Amos doesn't know how to lose. And now he's got a reason to hate me." Emma hugged herself against the cold, though it wasn't the wind that made her tremble. "Why did you leave back then? Why didn't you say goodbye?" Luke turned slowly, his eyes full of pain. "Because I blamed myself. Your brother's death, that was on me." Emma stared at him, stunned. He owed Amos money. I knew it. I could have stopped it, but I didn't. And when they found him that night, I couldn't face you. I couldn't forgive myself. Luke took a step closer. "But I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day." His words hung in the air like a long overdue confession. Emma felt the ground shift beneath her. Years of silence, now broken. Here, in the shadow of fear. Before she could respond, headlights pierced the darkness below. "They're here," Luke muttered. "Get inside. Lock everything." Emma wanted to argue, but Luke cupped her face with both hands, his voice unwavering. "No matter what happens, I'm going to protect you. Both of you, I swear it." Then he kissed her, quick, fierce, like it might be the last kiss he'd ever give. Emma wanted to beg him to stay, but all she could do was nod and run inside. Amos's truck skidded to a halt, gravel flying. 2 men jumped out with flashlights and raised voices. Luke grabbed the rifle he kept behind the bedroom door and took position on the porch. "You don't have anything here," he shouted. Amos stepped forward, arrogant, holding a folder under his arm. "On the contrary, Mathers, I've got paperwork, court orders, evidence. You think you can steal what's mine?" Luke didn't flinch. "She's not yours. She never was." The confrontation was inevitable. And inside, Emma watched through the window, holding Ellie close behind her. She knew this night would change everything. Outside, tension crackled in the air, and one wrong move could turn deadly. The moon cast light on their faces, and in one man's hand, something gleamed. A gun. Emma screamed, but it was too late. A shot rang out, shattering the night, and someone hit the ground. The sound of the gunshot thundered through the valley, echoing across the mountains like a late-breaking storm, silencing everything in its wake. Emma raced to the door, eyes wide with fear. Behind the couch, Ellie cowered, hands over her ears, frozen in shock. Outside, the world seemed suspended in time. Luke stood tall, rifle still in his hands. On the ground, one of Amos's men writhed in pain, clutching his bleeding shoulder. The shot hadn't killed, but everything had changed. Amos took a step, back, startled but still smug. "You're gonna regret that, Luke. You just shot an unarmed man." Luke lowered the rifle, but not his gaze. He aimed first. "I've got witnesses." Amos glanced around, rattled, the tension thickening like fog. "You can't hide out here forever. The law's gonna come for you." Luke stepped forward, eyes locked onto Amos's. "You don't know this land like I do. And you know what? You just crossed a line." Emma appeared on the porch, trembling. "Stop, please," Amos sneered. "Oh, Emma, you're gonna regret picking this lunatic." She descended the steps and placed herself between them. "He's not a lunatic. You think you can buy everything, but you can't buy what I feel." Luke turned to her, stunned. Emma drew a deep breath, heart pounding. "I love you, Luke. I loved you before you disappeared. Since the day you promised you'd never leave me alone." A collective hush fell over the clearing, the kind of silence that holds its breath. Luke stepped toward her, slowly, as if unsure he heard right. His eyes glistened. "You saying this 'cause you're scared, or 'cause it's real?" Emma smiled through tears. "It's real, even if we don't have tomorrow. Today, I'm yours." Luke pulled her into his arms, strong and sure, and for a moment, the world felt too small to contain what they felt. The kiss that followed was fierce, born of years of pain, longing, and love unspoken. They didn't know if they'd live to see dawn, but for now, this was everything God Amos couldn't take it. "This ain't over," he growled, dragging his wounded man back to the SUV. "You'll see." The vehicle disappeared into the darkness, kicking up dust and a promise of revenge. Luke looked at Emma and Ellie, still clinging to one another. "We need to get ready. He's not done." Emma nodded. "But now, we're together." The ranch fell quiet again. Not peaceful, but the stillness before a storm. And what came next would change everything. That night, Emma didn't sleep. Luke stood watch, a guardian in the shadows. In their hearts was fear, but also love. Strong enough to face whatever came. Or at least, that's what they believed. Until dawn broke, and an envelope was found pinned to the ranch gate. No name, no words. Inside, a photo of Luke with a target drawn over his heart. The sun had barely risen when Luke found the envelope pinned to the gate with a rusted knife. His fingers trembled as he opened it, not from fear, but from a fury so deep it made his hands shake. Inside was a black and white photo of himself, younger, standing in front of Pine Hollow Hospital on the day Emma's brother died. Drawn over his chest was a red circle, a target. The message was clear. Amos wasn't just threatening. He wanted to erase everything that remained of Luke, starting with his past. Inside the house, Emma was making coffee, but even the familiar smell brought no comfort. Ellie sat at the table, drawing with quiet focus, unaware of the tension thickening around her. When Luke walked in holding the photo, Emma knew something had changed. "He sent this," Luke said, showing her the image. Emma gasped, hand over her mouth. "He knows where we are, and he's not going to stop." Luke nodded grimly. "And there's more. This picture, someone took it. Someone who knew what happened that day. The past was back. And this time, there would be no running." Emma sat down heavily, her face pale. Why is he doing this? Revenge? Luke stared out the window, because I know too much. And I know what he did to your brother. It wasn't just about debt. It was a deal, a crime. Emma furrowed her brow, stunned. Luke went on. Amos forced your brother to sign over your family's land. When he refused, they sabotaged his truck. I saw the busted brakes. And I stayed quiet. I was scared. And because of that, your brother died. The truth hit Emma like a blow. She stood shaken. You knew and never told me? Luke tried to explain. I've carried that guilt for years. I thought walking away would protect you, but all it did was make things worse. Emma's eyes filled with tears. You should have told me. We could have fought together. Luke stepped closer, cupping her face gently. I'm here now. I'm done hiding. His touch was warm, steady, and though her heart ached, Emma didn't pull away. Outside, the sound of an engine broke the stillness. A black truck parked across the road. 2 men sat inside, watching the house. Luke grabbed his rifle and stepped onto the porch, but the men didn't move. They sat there, watching, then drove away. They're watching us, Luke said quietly, trying to break us with fear. Emma wrapped her arms around him from behind, her eyes locked on the road. He wants to divide us, but he won't. That night, they sat on the porch under a sky full of stars. Emma rested her head on Luke's shoulder. We're going to make it through this. Right? Luke squeezed her hand. It won't be easy, but you and Ellie, you're my life now, and I'll fight for that till the end. Emma looked up at him, her eyes shining. Then we fight together. They kissed under the night sky, unaware that miles away, Amos was watching from his office, planning his next move. The next morning, police cars pulled up to the ranch. Officers stepped out with a warrant. Luke was under arrest for attempted murder and illegal possession of firearms. It was the perfect play. Discredit him, isolate him, destroy him. Emma grabbed Luke's hand as the officers closed in. Don't let go of me, Luke. Whatever happens, we face it together. Luke looked at her, then at Ellie, and in that moment, he realized he was about to lose everything. Again. The handcuffs bit into Luke's wrists with brutal force, but he didn't flinch. Emma screamed at the officers, desperately trying to explain that it was all a setup, but no one listened. Ellie cried, clinging to her mother's leg as the ranch, once a peaceful refuge, now felt like a war zone. Luke was shoved into the back of the patrol car, his eyes locked on Emma's. He whispered only, "Take care of her, and trust me." Then the door slammed shut, and he vanished in a cloud of dust down the road. Hours later, inside the Pine Hollow Sheriff's office, Luke sat in silence as Amos Pickett strutted down the hall, grinning like a man who believed he'd won. You thought you could challenge me and walk away clean? Amos sneered through the bars. Luke didn't answer. He just watched, measuring every word, every movement. Amos leaned closer, voice low and venomous. She'll come back to me. You're finished. When they convict you, there'll be nothing left for her to hold on to. Luke's reply was cold, steady. You don't know Emma as well as you think. Back at the ranch, Emma rocked Ellie in her arms, the child tossing restlessly in sleep. The phone rang. It was the family's lawyer. Amos has frozen all your assets, even the account Luke opened in your name. And there's more there, trying to take custody of Ellie. Emma hung up, breathless. It was too much. But as her eyes landed on an old toolbox in the garage, something sparked. Maybe, for the first time, it was her turn to fight with the right weapons. The next morning, Emma went to City Hall to access property records. She was stone-walled, but she knew where to look. The hospital archives where her brother had died. She dug through piles of dusty folders, until she found it, his file, and a forensic report that had never been submitted to authorities. Cause of death? Brake failure. Signed by a mechanic ... who worked for Amos Pickett ... with the document in hand. Emma ran to the local newspaper. The editor, an old friend of her, Fathers, read the pages with growing shock. This could bury him, he said. But you and Ellie, you'll be in real danger. Emma nodded, eyes fierce. We're already in danger. It's time to fight back. That very night, the front page headline exploded. Evidence links Amos Pickett to suspicious death in 1985. The town erupted in chaos, and inside his cell, Luke heard the shouts from the street. Hours later, the sheriff entered Luke's cell, newspaper in hand, face pale. The charges against you are being reviewed. Luke looked up, hope flickering. And Emma? The sheriff hesitated. She's gone. Disappeared after the article was published. Luke jumped to his feet, heart pounding. She knew he'd retaliate, and now he may have done something. Panic surged, and in that moment, Luke knew he had to find her, even if it was the last thing he ever did. Night fell over Pine, hollow like a verdict. Freed at last, Luke drove his truck through empty streets like a man at war. His mind clung to a single image. Emma, in danger, and he was too far away. Her words echoed, "We face this together." But now, it might be too late. When he reached the ranch, the silence was suffocating. On the table in the living room, one clue remained: Emma's necklace, broken and stained with blood. The broken necklace slipped through Luke's fingers like fire, burning his skin. The small blue stone still shimmered, but now it was stained with dried blood. His heart pounded so loud he could barely hear his own thoughts. Emma had fought. That much he knew. But where was she now? And how far would Amos go? Luke clenched his fists, swallowing the fury rising inside him. He grabbed his rifle and the old radio from the shelf, storming out of the ranch and leaving the door swinging open behind him. Behind the wheel of his truck, Luke drove blindly, racing against time, mentally replaying every place Amos might use to hide someone. Abandoned barns, remote properties. Then it hit him. The old Pickett family sawmill, closed for years. A place no one visited anymore. A place with no witnesses. Luke yanked the steering wheel hard, his tires skidding across. The dirt road. Time was his enemy now, and every second of silence gnawed at his soul. Meanwhile, Emma awoke in a dark shed, her wrists bound and her head throbbing. A single bulb swung from the ceiling, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Amos sat on a crate nearby, watching her with cold, vengeful eyes. "You humiliated me in front of the whole town," he growled. "Now you'll learn what it means to cross me." Even weak, Emma didn't back down. "You can tie me up, Amos, but you'll never silence me again." Suddenly, the sound of an engine. Headlights streamed through the cracks in the wooden boards. Amos stood, yanking Emma to her feet. "He's here. Perfect. Let's end this." Emma struggled, but Amos pressed the barrel of a gun against her side. "He gives himself up, or you die." Outside, Luke cut the engine and grabbed his rifle, eyes locked on the shed. Every step forward was a risk, but he couldn't hesitate. Emma needed him, and for the first time in years, he wasn't running. Inside the shed, Amos shoved Emma to the floor and shouted, "Come on in, Luke. Let's finish this." Luke stepped through the door slowly, rifle raised. "Let her go, Amos. This ends tonight." Amos laughed, unhinged. "Yeah, it ends with you dead?" And her crawling back to me. But Emma didn't wait. With one swift kick, she knocked Amos off balance. His gun hit the floor. Luke lunged. A shot rang out. Silence, Emma collapsed to the ground, and Luke ran to her. Blood, but not hers. Amos lay nearby, wounded in the shoulder, groaning in pain. Emma looked up at Luke, shaking. "Are you okay?" he whispered, pulling her into his arms. She nodded, tears streaming. "I thought I lost you." He held her tight, and in that chaos, he finally spoke the words he'd buried for years. "Emma, I love you. I'm never leaving you again." She kissed him urgently, tears and relief blending into that kiss. And as sirens echoed in the distance, they knew they were finally free. But outside, hidden in the trees, someone watched, in his hands, another envelope, another threat. Because sometimes the past isn't ready to rest. The ambulance took Amos away in handcuffs, wounded, furious, and defeated. Red and blue lights flickered against the walls of the old shed, now emptied of shadows, but still full of memories Emma and Luke would never forget. Sitting in the bed of Luke's truck, Emma wrapped in a blanket and Ellie nestled between them. Silence finally felt safe. But Luke's eyes stayed on the horizon, ever watchful. Something gnawed at him. Something didn't fit. Amos never worked alone. Back at the ranch, while the town celebrated Pickett's downfall, Emma packed their bags. "The lawyer said the properties are legally mine again, but I don't want to stay here. Not anymore." Luke watched her quietly. "You're right. This place still carries his scars." He walked over to the fireplace, where flames crackled. Softly, Emma joined him, her hand finding his. "But we can start over, somewhere new, somewhere that's ours." Luke looked into her eyes, and without words. Everything was understood. In the days that followed, newspapers splashed headlines about Amos' arrest, decades of corruption exposed, and a couple brave enough to challenge it all. Luke and Emma, finally free, decided to leave Pine Hollow behind. They bought a small plot of land up north near Helena, where they could begin again. Ellie smiled again, running through wide-open fields, no fear, no threats. And at night, under a clear sky, Luke lifted her onto his shoulders and whispered, "You're going to grow up in peace, little one." On their last night at the ranch, Luke and Emma walked down to the lake behind the house. There, where so many memories had been buried, they created a new one. Lying under the stars, Emma whispered, "You kept your promise." Luke smiled, pulling her close. "And now I'm making another. I'm never running again. You're my home." Their kiss was slow, unhurried, but full of everything they'd endured. This was real love. Not perfect, not easy, but forged. From wounds that healed together. At dawn, as they loaded the last box into the truck, Luke found an envelope pinned to the pasture fence. Inside, a recent photo. Him, Emma, and Ellie at the town market. On the back, scribbled in black ink, "The story isn't over." Luke tucked the photo into his pocket, said nothing. He climbed into the truck, looked at Emma, and smiled. Time to move on, but his eyes betrayed what he felt. Sometimes, even when we're free, we remain prisoners of the past. As their truck disappeared down the dusty road, a figure watched from afar, binoculars in hand, a cold smile on his face, because Amos' brother was still out there, and he had sworn revenge. And so ends the story of Emma, Luke, and Ellie, a love story born in fear and pain, yet strong enough to survive vengeance, buried secrets, and the shadows of the past. A story that proves, even when everything seems lost, we can still find the strength to fight, and someone worth loving for real. But will their peace last? Or will the past come knocking once again? If this story touched your heart, leave a comment below. I believe in love that conquers all. I'd love to know where you're watching from, so write your city and state too. And if you enjoy emotional stories like this one, full of romance, suspense, and unforgettable endings. Make sure you subscribe to the channel right now and turn on the bell. Here, you'll get new stories every week that will stir your emotions, capture your heart, and remind you that love is always worth it. Leave a like, share this video with someone who loves a powerful story, and tell me, what would you do if you were in Emma's place? Would you run or fight for the love of your life? I'll see you in the next video. Until then,